My name is Ache, and I just want to start by saying thank you so much for tuning in. It really means a lot to me. I hope you enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can relate. I am sure that you have been in a situation or even a season where you needed some sort of distraction. I've had my fair share of situations and timelines where if I didn't have a distraction to get my mind off of these things, I literally would not know if I would have been able to get through the obstacles I had in front of me. I have used many different forms of distractions in my life, and some worked and some did more harm than good. And I'll get into that. But first, I like to break my distractions into types or categories: people, places, and things. Now, take a second and think about what you use to distract yourself. Does it vary depending on what you're going through? How long do you need to distract yourself for until you're satisfied? What happens when you don't have your distraction but you need it in that moment? The answers to these questions are important in determining if it's a healthy distraction for you or if it's doing you more harm than good. Let's start with the distractions under the people category. So this can be friends, family, flings, partners, lovers, strangers, situationships. It does not matter. My favorite distractions in this category are lovers and friends. That sounds straight out of a TV sitcom. Anyway. For me, it really depends on what's going on in my life, and that's how I decide who I want to go to. When it comes to friends, you might think that there's no way that can be an unhealthy way of dealing with stress. And I'm here to tell you that that's not fully true. It depends, honestly. Me and my friend were able to self-reflect and talk about it and move accordingly afterwards so that it was healthy for the both of us. Are we perfect? No. But we work together and we're honest with each other so that we can grow as great friends, but also as great individuals. Now, let me give you some context so that you can understand what I'm talking about. The friend I'm talking about is Dammy. We have been friends since high school and inseparable ever since. The reason why our friendship became so strong was because we would lean on each other. Definitely more me than her in the beginning, for sure. And we were vulnerable, we were honest, and we were comfortable being ourselves around each other, and we understood each other. However, we didn't really have classes with each other, so how did we get so close? The 89 Weston bus. It was the bus we took home from school every day. So on the bus, we would gossip, vent, talk, and complain about anything and everything that happened at school that day. And if the convo was too good, we would call each other to continue. And we would literally spend hours on the phone, and it was as if we didn't have school the next day. And that's how our friendship grew to what it is today. Any news we had, we went to each other about it. Social, personal, boring, or serious. As time went on, it became second nature for us that every thought we had about literally anything, any feeling, any experience, big, small, we would and will call each other about it. And as cute as this may sound to someone on the outside looking in, we realized that we were very codependent. The good thing about this is that it shows how strong our friendship is, and that in any time of need, we can always count on each other. And the downside to this is that when you're super attached and dependent on someone, it can be very hard to deal with things when they're not there. There have been times where I really needed to talk to Dammy about something, and she would be working or on a trip or hanging out with other people. And because I'm so accustomed to getting a response right away when I needed it from her, when I didn't get it, it made me very anxious. Because now I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to dissect my emotions right now? Where am I going to put all these pent up emotions? Who is going to distract me from what I'm feeling right now? But one thing I love about me and Dammy is that our main focus in our friendship is to grow together, but as individuals. And to always be learning about each other and about ourselves. So once we realized how codependent we were of each other, we decided to take certain steps to changing that without having it affect the friendship in a negative way. For example, when I'm in a state of panic for whatever reason, now I try to calm myself down first and try to break down my own thoughts and emotions first. And then I'll go to Dammy about it. Because sometimes there's no time for distractions. Sometimes you need to deal with the things as they come. But that's a lot easier said than done. Sometimes depending on what the situation is. Another example. You know when you're at a grocery store or in a line somewhere or just walking around outside and you start to feel bored and maybe uncomfortable because you're alone and not really doing anything, you have nothing in your hands, and the music in your ears is just not enough? When this would happen to me, I would just call Dammy. I would make her help me kill the time. Even if we weren't talking to each other, just knowing that she was on the phone was enough for me to not be as bored as I was when I wasn't on the phone. But now we're trying to just be in the boredom, be in the discomfort, just be in the moment. No distractions, just solitude. It's definitely hard, but it almost forces you to make the most of the life around you. And it's pretty beautiful. Now on to lovers. Spending quality time with a guy I liked or loved was the best way to take the stress off of me. It's actually a big reason as to why I don't want to be single anymore, because I genuinely miss being coddled by a man that I love. The positive part of this certain type of distraction is that it would satisfy the needs of my physical form and my ego. For example, when I was still talking on and off to my first situationship, I would go to him when I would feel any type of stress. Long day at work, I'm going to his house. Feeling lonely, I'm going to his house. My house is too loud, I'm going to his house. It's raining outside, I'm going to his house. And because I had such an emotional attachment to this person, it was deeper than just cuddling or sex. It meant more to me. And because of this emotional attachment I had, being in his presence calmed me down instantly. And to me, that was great. And when it came to my ego, he really helped distract me from my insecurities, because he used to make me feel like I was the most beautiful girl in the world. He would gas my head up, and I loved it. Now, the downside to having a lover or a situationship as your distraction, notice I didn't say boyfriend or girlfriend. All right. Is that 9 times out of 10, the chaos happening in your life may get covered up with the quality time you spend with this person. But at the same time, the quality time you're receiving is also distracting you from the fact that this person might not be for you. And when it comes to lovers and situationships, they most likely are not for you. It's basically creating future problems by trying to distract yourself from the problems around you right now. For example, when I was still talking to him and I would go to him to distract me for literally everything. Side note, I loved that I could completely turn my brain off around him. Like, yes, we would have some deep conversations sometimes, but it wasn't heavy enough to ruin my night. And we would always just crack jokes after and go back to normal. It was just so nice watching him play video games, listen to music, just completely turn my brain off while laying next to someone I loved. But anyway, I would go to him and then I would go back home. And it's like I would get sad because deep down I knew there's a lot more cons than pros with this person. He was a lazy lover. I always had to go to him and he would never come to me. He wouldn't even get me a card on my birthday. And then my mind would race on all the reasons why we were in a situationship and not in a relationship. And then I would get stressed again. And what do I do when I'm stressed? Exactly. I was in a vicious cycle that wasn't going to end unless I decided to end it. Because before, it was so easy for me to lie to myself so that I can benefit from my distraction, even though I knew better. And after so many years, it finally ended. And now the hard part about that ending is that now when I'm feeling lonely, there's no one to comfort me. And obviously, I'm talking about in a romantic sense. And don't get me wrong, going to my girls, going to Dammy is great, but I can't turn my brain off with my girls. The type of girls I have around me are the type that like to talk and vent and break things down and have deeper, meaningful conversations, which I wouldn't trade that for the world. So it's not me complaining. It's just that sometimes I want to turn my brain off. We're the type to get to the root of certain situations and issues. We cry together, we're vulnerable with each other, and we are each other's rocks. And like I said, sometimes I just don't want to talk. Sometimes I don't want to vent. Sometimes I just don't want to break things down. Sometimes I don't even want to cry. I just want to exist in the arms of someone I love. And I want to be able to turn off the noise. I want to just be and be calm. And this is why the lover girl in me was so open and ready to dating this summer, because I was missing, and I am missing, what I once had. Not the person, but the temporary peace of mind that that person was able to give me in my times of need. Obviously, it was an unsuccessful summer in terms of dating, like I mentioned in my last episode, but it did teach me how to self-soothe by force, as always. It's definitely not the same self-soothing. It doesn't even come close. But I pray to God this is temporary. And so far, it's keeping me afloat. So how do I do it? How do I self-soothe? I find other distractions. Which brings me to the second category, which is places. So this can be shopping malls, it can be the gym, work, clubs, bars, home, your bedroom, an airport. So, you know those ones when life becomes so stressful and so unbearable that you're just like, you know what? Let me just run away to another country. Just give me 10 days somewhere nice, somewhere warm, near a beach. Just get me out of here. My trip to New York was great. There was no beach there, but it's fine. It was great. Don't get me wrong. And Lord knows I needed the break. But when I came back, I was still working the same job. My bank account was still red, and I still didn't get asked out on no dates. My walk with God was still stressing me out. Mental health was still all over the place. And for the first time, I was like, I don't even feel like running away anymore. I just want my issues to be resolved. I'm tired of coming back home miserable. I'm tired of going on vacation to run away. I want to go on vacation as an addition to the joys of my life. I want to go to explore, not to ignore. You know what I mean? Another example of a time where I used different places as a means to distract myself was last year when everything was happening with my grandma. She kept getting sick. She was in and out of the hospital. The energy in the house was so heavy. And in those moments, I did whatever I could to get out of the house. I went to Lakeshore almost every morning for a run. It started off with morning walks, and then I was just like, let's try something new. Let's spice things up. And I was going to the gym 3 to 4 days a week. And I was very consistent to the point where I felt comfortable enough and strong enough to run a 5K, which I had never, ever thought of doing in my life. Never. But when I was running and when I would be at the gym, my mind was quiet, and I needed that. Because even though the house was quiet, the chaos around me, the energy around me was so loud. And honestly, it helped me stay numb. It helped me not feel things. The only downside to it was that I started hyper-focusing on my body image, and I suppressed a lot of emotions that needed to come out. I felt very cold and empty spiritually because I wasn't able to feel my emotions, and that sucked. Not all healthy things are always good for you. Mindset and context matters. Suppressed emotions may seem great in the moment because you think you have control over those emotions. But the thing about suppressed emotions that so many people refuse to understand is that it comes out in other areas of your life. And a lot of times your suppressed emotions can and will hurt the people around you because those emotions have to go somewhere. And it might come out as anger, it might come out as rudeness, it might come out as irritability or even violence, or it might bring you down a pit of depression. Distractions can only do so much. If you're going to the gym because you're focusing on your health, that's great. If you're going to the gym because you went through a breakup and you don't want to spend your time crying over it, that's great. If you're going to the gym because a loved one passed away and you just want to feel something, or even feel nothing, that's great too. But the same way you're working on your muscles is the same way you should be working on your mental health. It's okay if you're grieving. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have hard days. But it's not okay to allow your suppressed emotions to hurt the people who care about you and hurt people around you. Anyway, my favorite place to go and to just clear my head and just quiet the noise around me is Lakeshore. I hate the city, but Lakeshore is the best thing downtown has to offer. Just sitting right by the water, watching people pass by, listening to a sermon or some music. It really is one of my favorite places in Ontario. Now, to be fair, I don't really know many places in Ontario, but out of the places I do know, this one is my favorite. The only downside to Lakeshore is that I can't go in the winter. It gets way too cold, and it's not very fun. And plus, gas is too expensive to be driving downtown every day. I still do it, but the gas station does not distract me at all. It actually adds stress. I want you to think about your place that you run away to, and then ask yourself, is this place hurting me financially? Is this place hurting me mentally or physically? Is this place sustainable in the long run? Is this place truly making me happy? And how do I feel about this place after I go there? After the high is gone, how do I feel? These questions should help you decipher the pros and cons of your distraction, and it should show you if it's worth it or not. And now for the last category, things. This could be smoking, drinking, sex, TV, clubbing, cooking, hobbies, your phone, eating food, whatever. You get my point. Now, do you know the saying, you can have too much of a good thing? Essentially what that means is that too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. Like if we look at the gym, just working out in general as an example, trainers always talk about how important it is to rest. If you don't rest, you become more at risk for injuries and stress mentally and physically. All sorts of things. In my opinion, the worst types of distractions in this category are the ones that seem harmless, because those ones can really creep up on you and slowly become an addiction without you even recognizing it. I mentioned how last year, with everything happening with my grandmother, I was going to the gym and I was being active. However, that wasn't enough for me. Yes, I can spend a few hours at the gym and at the lake, but what about the other hours? How am I supposed to stay numb throughout my day while I'm in my room or while I'm at work or while I'm driving? My little harmless distraction was Netflix. I could not go more than 20 minutes without watching a show. It was to the point where while I was driving, and I'm sorry in advance, Mommy, because I know that's going to make her so mad, but while I was driving, I would be watching a show. I would mount my phone up to those magnetic charging stands and I would be watching Netflix. While I was at work, I was watching something. As I'm getting ready, I'm watching something. I was attached to my phone. I used to rush people off the phone if they were calling me just so that I can continue watching my shows. It was bad. But I thought to myself, it's not hurting me. It's not hurting the people around me. It's not stopping me from getting things done. So I'm good. Wrong. I was not good. While I was in the thick of it, I was fine. Or at least I thought I was fine. But then I was reflecting and I noticed that I was spending way too much time watching shows and that it was time to stop. When I decided to stop, that's when it became a problem. I would have anxiety attacks because I wasn't able to self-soothe with TV shows anymore. Of course, it wasn't by force that I had to stop, but I just knew that it wasn't a good habit. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be dependent on this. So when I decided to wean myself off, it was very difficult for me. Yes, I still watch Netflix, but it's a much healthier amount of time that I spend watching TV shows. It's a lot easier for me to sit with my stresses and issues now, so I'm not using Netflix as a way of coping anymore. I'm watching for leisure now. You're probably thinking I'm over-exaggerating or that it's not that serious, but panicking and feeling really dark inside when you don't have your distraction is not a good thing. Maybe for you it's not Netflix, and maybe it's just something like smoking. Which brings me to my next example. I have been around smokers my entire life. Cigarettes, weed, you name it. And yes, I've dabbled, but luckily it just never stuck for me. I never really saw the issue with weed specifically until I started working at a dispensary. Now, if you're not Canadian, you may not know, but Canada has legalized marijuana and they sell it everywhere. It's very interesting. Very interesting. And no, you don't have to be a stoner to be working at a dispensary. I got offered the job during the pandemic, and the rest is history. But working at a dispensary teaches you a lot about the effects of weed on certain people. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of benefits to weed when it comes to pain and sleep and other things. But more times than not, especially at my dispensary in particular, because I work close to a university and a college, I see a lot of 19 to 30-year-olds who depend on weed to get through their day. 19 to 30 years old dependent on a drug. I see people spend hundreds of dollars a week on weed. And no, I'm not pocket watching. You can do whatever you want with your money. That's your business. But it just shows you the lengths that people will go to have their distraction. And I only know this because I asked customers. I love to ask them, why do they smoke? Some people say it's boredom. Some people say it's stress. Some people say it's spiritual. Some people say it's sleep. Some people it's for the pain. And that's fine. But what worries me is when I get customers who are aware of the negative impact that weed is having in their lives. And then they come into the store and they say, give me the strongest thing you've got. I've decided I'm not going to smoke weed anymore. This is the last time. This is my last day. I know it's not good for me. This is the end. And then they come back a month later. And then the month later turns into a week later. And then a week later turns into days. And now they're a regular customer again. I use this example because it's what I'm around the most. But I'm here to tell you, any distraction that you abuse to run away from your life can easily become an addiction. And I know there's people who tell me all the time, no, weed is not addictive. I can stop tomorrow if I wanted to. And then they don't. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. And sure, let's say that weed is not scientifically an addictive drug. Just like eating junk food or watching TV or talking on the phone or working out every single day. I personally think that people get addicted to the numbness that these distractions cause. Just because it's not heroin or cocaine doesn't mean it can't be harmful to you still. Harmful to you and the people around you, because how you react when you don't have this certain type of distraction can become very scary sometimes on the outside. I've had customers try to fight me for weed. We have signs around the store that literally tell customers, please, no verbal or physical abuse to the people working here. I've seen people literally spaz out just because we didn't have a certain strain that they really liked. And like I said, I know there's a ton of benefits to weed. I know it helps people with their anxiety. I know it helps people with their depression. I know it helps people with their pain. But it's when you abuse anything and when you become dependent on anything, that's when it becomes an issue. Not just weed, anything. But yeah, one thing I learned about being dependent on any type of distraction, whether it's a place, person, thing, is that the more time you give to your distractions is the less time you have to healing yourself. And no, healing yourself is not going to take away the stress in your life and the issues in your life, but it will help you respond differently to said stress and issues. It will help you not depend on distractions that are not good for you. Also, when you spend most of your time distracted, life is still happening around you. It's easy to miss out on opportunities because you're so engulfed in that numbing sensation. And then, whether you want to believe it or not, this can become a spiritual issue. When you're constantly in a state of being distracted, you will never have the time to reflect on yourself and on your blessings. And when you're not able to see your blessings or feel your blessings, that can put more stress on you and create more sadness and create more doubt and turn into depression. And this is what the enemy wants. It wants to pull you away from God. It wants to pull you away from your destiny. It wants to pull you away from seeing the other side, feeling the light again. It wants to change you into someone you are not. Now, in conclusion, I do think distractions are necessary because everybody deserves a break from this crazy and difficult world that we live in. When you're constantly dealing with heavy things, when things are just not going right, all anybody wants is a frickin' break. But please don't turn your break into a lifestyle. Knowledge is power, okay? Take time to know yourself, monitor yourself, and self-reflect. And if you need help or guidance, don't be afraid to ask somebody for help. And I know it's easier said than done, but I'm going to add a link in the caption to some resources that can help you during hard and difficult times and with addiction. Also, try changing your distractions up a little bit. I know it's also easier said than done, but sometimes all you want to do is sit in the darkness because it feels most comfortable to you. And I get it. Trust me, I do. Breaking habits and coming out of your comfort zone takes practice and it takes dedication. And most importantly, it takes time. So take your time, and slowly but surely, you'll be where you want to be. But if you know what I'm talking about, share this with a friend or send it in the group chat. Like, comment, follow, and who knows? Maybe you can relate. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Before you go, I want to leave you with a question and a word that you can meditate on for the rest of the week. This week's question is, in what area of your life do you have a hard time telling the truth? And the word of the week is from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 35. I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord best, with as few distractions as possible. I hope you have an amazing week ahead. Your potential to succeed is infinite, and you got this. Follow, like, share, and comment. This is Maybe You Can Relate.